Good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock, so we will proceed. I see all members are here. So some opening remarks before we begin the hearing. Good afternoon and welcome to this online hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa. The Committee of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial tribunal appointed by City Council to make decisions on certain types of planning applications. My name is Michael Wildman. I will be chairing this meeting today. Here with me are my fellow panel members, Bonnie Oak-Charon, Stan Wilder, and Heather McLean. Please take note that this video conference is being live streamed on YouTube. The video will be archived along with today's agenda on the city's website. Before we begin, we have a few items to outline for your information. While the issues surrounding development in the city are broad, our mandate is quite limited. The committee cannot consider aspects of the proposal that are not related to the required variances, such as building height or parking, noise, pollution, property maintenance, property values, prosecution for illegal construction, personal comments about neighbors, agents, or applicants, additional variances without proper public notice, if there is an identified need for an additional variance, including an increase to the extent of relief required, a recirculation of the application is required. As part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property and file a statutory declaration confirming the sign posting. This declaration must be part of the file today before we can hear the application. And I understand most have not been received, so we will be administering the oath verbally here today. Regarding quorum, if this is lost during the hearing due to a technical issue, the proceedings will be paused to allow time for the resolution of the issue. Failing the ability to reinstate quorum, hearing of the items remaining will resume on the outside of the next regularly scheduled meeting of the committee. In terms of the hearing process, listed on the agenda and appearing on the screen are the following applications we will hear today. For the sake of efficiency, the committee may deal with agenda items in a different order. Please note that committee members have reviewed the application materials prior to this hearing, as well as any written submissions received in support or in opposition. In addition, the committee will hear today oral submissions from any interested party as part of our proceedings. The committee may ask for a brief presentation by the applicant, followed by questions from the members where clarifications may be needed. The public submissions portion of the hearing will then begin, and any interested parties will be invited to make their submissions to the committee. Panel members may then ask follow-up questions where added clarification may be required. When you are called upon to provide your comments, we will ask you to do the following. Start with stating your name and your municipal address for the record. We may ask you to spell your name. Then begin your submission by addressing your comments to the panel members. You may ask questions, but please direct those questions to me as the chair. Please limit your comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at the committee's discretion. Once all interested parties have had the opportunity to address the panel, the public submission portion of the hearing will then be closed. The committee will then make an oral decision to either grant or deny the application. The committee may also choose to reserve its decision. In such case, the panel will deliberate further on the evidence presented immediately following the adjournment of the public hearing. In either case, the committee will send within 10 days of its decision and to all parties and those who have requested it in written decision that sets out the reasons for the decisions. Decisions of the Committee of Adjustment may be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal for a fee within 20 days of the date of the written submission. However, only the applicant, the City of Ottawa, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and certain public bodies that have an interest in the matter may appeal the decision. Certain public bodies include public utilities, but do not include an individual or a community association. So with that, we're going to move to items of business. First, are there any declarations of interest from any member of the committee? Seeing none, we will move to confirmation of minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes. So with respect to the minutes from February 1st of this year, does any member have any comments to add? Could those minutes then be carried? Okay, those minutes are carried. With respect to the February 15th minutes, does any member have any comments to add? Okay, could those minutes then be carried? And those minutes are carried. Great. We do have two potential items for adjournment, which we will address first. So we will be going to item number 2, 345, 347 Barber Street. And I would like to hear from planning staff on this one. There was a request for potential adjournment on this one. So Ms. Linker, do you have anything to inform the committee about? We did see that you had received some information and we're hoping to get more. Where are you on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff have received the information necessary to confirm that the minimum required number of parking spaces for bicycle parking can be provided on the subject site. So therefore, we are happy to hear this today.
Okay, fair enough then. Members of the committee will move this back into the regular rotation in the agenda. And the next item for potential adjournment is item 6. This is 667 Churchill Avenue. And we have an adjournment request there. And the requester for the adjournment, if you would please come forward and identify yourself with your name and address. Committee coordinator, do we have someone who's prepared to speak to this?
Mr. Chair, it appears we do. I believe they're online, but muted at the moment.
Okay.
Okay, I'm here.
Your name and address, please.
Yeah, I'm Luc Lavoie. I'm at 1047 Notre Dame Street in Embrun. I'm the designer, architect, and for the client.
Okay.
So
and on the topic of adjournment, do you have any comments?
we don't want to adjourn. I don't know if it was the neighbor who wants to adjourn. I talked to the neighbor this morning, but we're not interested to adjourn the meeting. I think the issue was very minor, and it's regarding trees, and we could resolve that with the presentation today.
When you spoke to the neighbor, did they give you any input? Are they here today?
I don't know if they're going to be able. She's 85 years old, yeah. So she was concerned about the privacy of. She has no problem with the project. It's just the privacy of windows. But like the planners was saying in his report, Madame Linker, she said in the report that the second story was not lots of window, was just 2 bedrooms, and the other was bathroom. So I explained to her that I don't know if she understands, but I told her that we ready to help her if for some concern, and she wanted maybe 1 or 2 trees, and we'll propose 2 trees. I talked to my urbanist, arborist, and she said we could plant 2 conifer, and also Madame the neighbor wants some lilac, so we'll put some lilac for her. So on the fence.
Sir, we'll just put you on hold for 1 moment. Members of committee, it doesn't appear that we have anyone present to address the committee with respect to the adjournment. On the matter of adjournment, does any member of committee wish to speak?
There is no reason. I want to represent the resident at 669, the neighbor, but I don't know. My picture is not there. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can. Can I have your full name and your address, please?
Yes, it's my name is Kul Kapoor, and my sister is sitting with me, Purushotama Kapoor. She is not computer literate, and so she came to my home, and my home address is 79 Bellevue Drive in Canada.
And we saw your letter that was submitted. Would you
Yes.
like to speak to the request for adjournment and whether you're still requesting an adjournment or whether you resolved issues?
Yes, please. No, we would like to discuss first, and I'm pretty sure we can come to an agreement or resolve the issue, not resolve, even we can mitigate the issues. But once we meet, so far we haven't met, and we don't even understand the full project yet because the plans that I got, they were the camera pictures, and we are not very computer literate. I am kind of a 50%. But once we sit down and talk, I'm sure everything can be resolved. But let's sit down first and postpone it to next meeting, and that will be plenty of time to resolve, and that will be with agreement. Things will go a lot smoother.
So without discussing all of the merits of the application, what are your current concerns?
Whatever's in the letter, basically concern is about privacy, of course, but we didn't have enough time to study all this proposal and so on. As I said in the letter, we received these detailed plans, the plan only on Thursday, just 3 or 4 days ago, and then we don't know the process. We are just what impact it will have. I still don't know. Maybe there are no issues, but maybe there are. So I don't know how they can be resolved. But once we sit down together, once Mr. Lua can just tell me the plans a little bit more in orally, we sure can figure out how to mitigate those small issues. Just 2 lilacs or 2 the conifers may or may not do the trick, but there are possibilities. I have been talking to the owners of the property, and they are in favor of and I wouldn't say postponing, but they say everything can be resolved. These are minor. We have very good relations with him, at least since we have been talking since yesterday. And there is no anonymity or anything. It's just a matter of sitting together. We
Okay.
just want a chance to look at the plans and understand.
Generally speaking, this committee is inclined to encourage discussion. Does any member of committee wish to have any comments on the matter of deferral till the next meeting? If we have the room for it, Ms. Sharon?
I think it's reasonable, a short adjournment to allow the parties to meet.
Okay. Ms. McLean?
Yes, yeah, I would like to adjourn.
Okay, just hold, sir. I'm polling the members. Ms. McLean?
Oh, sorry.
Yes, I agree with an adjournment. I think we do encourage the applicant to reach out to the neighbors and discuss it prior to the hearing. So in this case, I think we're hearing that they haven't had the time. So I would vote in favor of an adjournment. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Wilder?
I'll go along. I think a deferral to the next meeting would be in order.
If I could ask the Secretary Treasurer if this were to be adjourned until the next meeting, do we have room on that agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair, there is room on the April 5th agenda.
Okay, members of committee will vote on adjournment. So adjournment to the next available committee meeting. Okay, this matter is adjourned until the next meeting. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. And Mr. Lua, we look forward to meeting you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, members of committee, we're going to return to the agenda in the order in which it is submitted. So we will go to item 1. This is, bear with me 1 second. It's a minor variance for 78 Rosemount Avenue. And can we have the agent for the application come forward with your name and your address, please?
Hi, Mr. Chair. My name is Jacob Levinson. My municipal address is 545 Windermere Avenue.
Okay, and I need to have you swear the oath, so just bear with me 1 second. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the applicant applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do affirm.
Okay. We've read your submission. We do have a few questions that we have. With respect to the amended site plan, if we could have staff just for a minute explain that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff requested confirmation from the applicants that the rear-facing balconies would be compliant under the zoning bylaw, and the site plan was revised to ensure compliance.
Okay, thank you. Just real quickly, sir, the 4 tests under the Planning Act that must be met. Would you do the committee a favor, please, and walk us through the 4 tests?
If I may, I have my architect, Jesse Smith, on the call as well. And if I could ask her to help me with that, answering that question.
Okay.
So the 4 tests, this is a test for me, that the variance be minor. Sorry. I'm blanking on the other ones. That's the one that jumps to mind.
So there are 4 tests under the Planning Act, and they not only must not be just stated, they must be explained how the application satisfies the 4 tests. And in order for this committee to make a decision, somebody's going to have to demonstrate to us that the 4 tests have been met.
Sorry,
is there someone on your team who can do that?
Yeah, Jake, you were preparing a presentation, correct?
Yes, I'm sorry, I can refer back to the documents that were submitted with the application if you give me 1 moment. So the first test is whether or not the application is in line with the general intent of the purpose of the official plan. And policy 3.615 indicates that the city supports intensification of the general urban area where it will complement the existing pattern and scale of development and plan function of the area. We believe that, and I think city staff echoed this in their report, that the building is sympathetic to the existing character and in line with planned development and intensification. The second test is that it maintains the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. The reduced rear yard setback notwithstanding, we do feel that the building as it is proposed, based on its the fact that it conforms to nearly all of the rules and regulations set out by the bylaw, that it does generally conform to that. We do believe that the setback is, or the variance is, minor in nature. There is a 1.5 meter relief being sought, but we do believe that that is minor. And lastly, whether or not this building is desirable for the appropriate development or use of the land. We do believe that, based on the fact we are not changing the use of the land and we are adding housing units to that property and in support, which is supported by the community association and some of the other neighbors that it is appropriate.
And can you explain to us what would happen, what would the impact of not receiving this variance be on your project?
We would have to assess the positioning of the building and or size of the building on the lot. One or of two things could happen, either or. One is the loss of outdoor space for some of the units along the front of the building or back of the building. So up to 9 units would lose private outdoor space. Alternatively, the units contained in the building would have to shrink, therefore reducing the livability of the units and or the number of bedrooms per unit. Right now we have 10 units of 2-bedroom with 2 bedrooms, and that unit mix would likely have to substantially change.
Members of committee, I'll open it up to you if you have any questions for the applicant's agent. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question. I guess I'm still not sold on the fact that you really that 4 to 5 feet is going to make that significant a difference. When you talk about the community association, they're very pleased with a number of changes that you've made regarding the opaque on the balconies, regarding the bicycle parking and the garbage storage, but there's still a concern regardless. And what you didn't mention was they're not supportive of that variance for the the total rear yard area is one thing, but regarding the rear yard setback, surely architecturally, Ms. Smith, there are ways to accommodate that building, notwithstanding that you've had to set back the building further in the front yard for reasons of that Hydro is requesting. Maybe you can explain that, but I still feel that in terms of design, I've seen buildings that accommodate these type of units, keeping within the height envelope and still meeting the city's zoning standard for the rear yard setback. So I guess I'm not completely sold that that setback is required. I mean, the city put in place a new R4 zoning, the R4U. I understand that, but they put in place to permit that density, that number of units. They've put in place standards, and they've set a standard for the rear yard. And I really feel that design-wise, Ms. Smith, there are ways to design this to meet that requirement. That's my comment. Thank you.
So just in response to that, as Jake had mentioned, it could be redesigned and the building could be shorter. However, the unit mix would change and we would lose the ability to have 2-bedroom units at the rear of the building. Those would likely become 1-bedroom units. We're really targeting family units in the building. Or the outdoor space could be reduced, the private outdoor amenity space, which we understand is a valuable amenity.
Thank you. I believe we have a speaker from the Hintonburg Community Association. Is she here?
Yes, I am.
Welcome. Your name, please, and address.
My name is Cheryl Parrott. The address is 132 Bayview Station Road, Ottawa.
Okay. You have 5 minutes to present your information to the committee. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks so much. And yes, the Hintonburg Community Association is opposed to the granting of that requested variance to reduce the rear yard setback. We're not opposed to intensification on this lot, but we feel that we do have to oppose the failure to adhere to the recent R4U bylaw. That was important for us because it increased the rear yard setback, and that was to minimize the impact of the increased density on neighboring properties that R4U zoning provided. So that greatly increased density and that increased rear yard helps to mitigate some of the density impacts. So loss of privacy for neighbors, loss of green space, even though we realize they have met the green space, but also increased lot coverage and loss of permeable surfaces that we see within this community overall. So we did meet with them and the neighbors to review the plans, and we understand they had to be modified after the meeting to increase the front yard setback to meet the hydro requirements. And the hydro setback is not a new requirement. We've been dealing with it on development issues for a decade or more, so it's not an unknown factor. Last year, city staff working on the official plan said that the R4U zoning provides all the permissions required to meet the new OP intensification targets to get us to 2046. And that they expect only minimal tweaks to the new zoning bylaw that will be coming forward for 2025. So we submit that the variance request to reduce the rear yard setback from 8.77 meters to 7.3 meters is not minor, and that the R4U zoning increased the setback for appropriate reasons. We believe that if this variance is granted, it will be used as a precedent in subsequent developments. They always quote whatever's happened before. Appropriate development intensification of this property is possible without reducing the rear yard setback. We submit that this variance does not maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw or the official plan, both of which are pretty new. We acknowledge, and it was brought up before, we're very happy that the rear yard area will have a tree. We appreciate that. And the secure garbage area, enclosed garbage area, I very much appreciate, and the bicycle shed provided. And the applicant has confirmed that they will put opaque screening on balconies, including the panels facing the side yards, and that the property will be surrounded by a wood fence, which again, we appreciate because we've run into issues on infill regarding those things. So we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does any member of committee have any questions or comments on the delegation? Okay. Mr. Levinson, do you have any additional feedback on what you heard from the delegation?
Mr. Chair, a couple of small pieces of feedback. I don't want to reiterate what has already been said. Of course, I respectfully disagree with the Community Association's assessment of the variance not being minor. We have discussed the context of the site, but one thing that we haven't brought forward was the fact that the majority of the amenity space of the single-family homes to the west is taken up by vehicle parking. The amenity space that would be proper backyards have significant amount of tree coverage. So it's my belief that the privacy would not be impacted. The privacy of the amenity space in the rear yards of the neighbors to the west would not be impacted as greatly as is believed. And I did also want to call out the one comment on the loss of permeable and soft surfaces based on this variance. We are still meeting significantly in excess of the total permeable and soft surfaces of the lot, as well as meeting any rear yard requirements. Rear yard area requirements is simply the rear yard setback that is at question.
Thank you, sir. Members of committee, would you prefer to reserve on this, or would you rather proceed to vote? Ms. Saucheron?
I'm wondering if we could hear from the planning department. I'd like to hear their response to the community association's, in my view, very reasonable idea they put forward that this doesn't meet the intent of the zoning bylaw.
Fair enough. If we could have planning staff come forward and give us your views on what you heard so far.
Thank
We
you.
understand that there are no comment and no concerns provided, but based on what you've heard today, is there anything else that you would say?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you said, planning staff have no concerns and believe that the subject minor variance application meets the 4 tests for minor variance. The intent of the rear yard setback in terms of the R4 zone is to protect the amenity area and to provide space for trees, in addition to providing that privacy space between abutting lots. Staff believe that's the reduced 1.5 meters. We don't believe that it will make a large difference in terms of privacy, and still feel that it's sufficient in terms of what they are providing for that respect. And looking at the site context, staff believe that because the lot is located closer to an intersection, that's very different compared to a context where the site would be mid-block. That would pose different types of concerns from staff, or it might create those types of concerns. But looking at the site context, staff believe that it's appropriate.
Thank you, Ms. Linker. Ms. Oakesharon, is that what you were looking for?
That answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Members of the committee, are we prepared to make a decision now, or would we prefer to reserve? Mr. Wilder. Can't hear you, Mr. Wilder.
Personally, I would prefer to reserve on this. I have one question to Ms. Linker, actually, in regards to what she just said. Ms. Linker, I understand that this property is near the intersection, but I'm also concerned, it's not so much it being near the intersection, but it still backs onto residential properties to the west. And I guess that's my concern, that looking at the properties, abutting the properties, yes, there may be some properties that have parking at the rear and other uses, but not necessarily every property. And I just feel that notwithstanding, there is adequate amenity area in terms of planting trees and putting in the bicycle parking, putting in the shed, whatnot. I still think that there's ways that the proposed standard in the zoning bylaw could be met. You don't agree with that, then, I'm assuming?
Through you, Mr. Chair, upon staff's review of the applications, staff did not anticipate any privacy concerns related to this. I will also reiterate that this was a site plan control file that's gone through a review process through internal and external contacts. And this, I'm not aware that this concern came up in the past, and it wasn't brought up by previous staff.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have Member Wilder who would like to reserve. Ms. Oakesharon, would you prefer to reserve, or are you comfortable making a decision now?
I'm all right to go ahead now, but I'm fine to reserve as well.
Okay, Ms.
Panel
McLean?
decides.
Either.
Sorry, you cut out, your mic went off.
Either way, Mr. Chair, I'm fine.
I'm comfortable voting myself, so I think we've got 3 that are comfortable voting on this particular file. On this matter, on approval of this application, members who are in favor, please. We have 1, and that means that this file has failed, and the full decision will be issued within 10 days. Thank you. On to the item number 2. So item number 2 is 345, 347 Barber Street, and we heard earlier from staff that the information that was potentially going to trigger a request for adjournment has been provided, and that there's now comfort there. So I guess I personally don't feel that there's a need for a presentation per se, but if the applicant could come forward, please.
Good afternoon, Chair. I'm the applicant and agent of the file.
And your name and your address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Costa Dervish of 197 Spadina Avenue in Toronto.
Okay, thank you. And we'll be administering the oath. Will you be the one swearing it?
If yes, I'm the applicant and agent. So
Okay. All right. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property line to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
yes, I do solemnly swear.
Thank you. Sir, we don't need a full presentation, but if you wouldn't mind just walking us through at a high level your request for the variance that you're seeking.
Yeah, absolutely. So there was an agreement for the provision of affordable housing that is set to expire, and with that expiration, the agreed upon parking, the parking allotment that is on the subject lands will no longer be adherent to the agreement will no longer be enforced, and therefore the enforced zoning bylaw will take into effect. So the issue with that is that we have no room to add any parking. The variance requested isn't going to change any of the existing condition on the subject lands. We just want to be adherent to the zoning based on that expired agreements.
Thank you, sir. And would you be amenable to the variance being tied to the life of the building?
So the variance for the parking, the site specific being tied to the life of the building, meaning any changes to the building, or like how do you mean?
The building were to be removed and replaced.
Oh,
no
yeah.
longer.
Yes, that sounds like it's a fair agreement.
Members of the committee, do you have any questions? Ms. Linker, do you have anything to add on this, or are you comfortable with this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. After review of the plans that we received this morning, staff feel more comfortable supporting the reduction in parking.
Okay. Members of committee, are we ready to vote on this then? Okay, on approval of item number 2 with the amended requirement that the variance be tied to the life of the building. Okay, this is approved. Congratulations, sir. Well, good luck with the changes you're imposing.
Thank you very much.
Okay, over to item number 3 on the agenda. And this is a minor variance at 2 Sims Avenue. And the variance is to permit a reduced corner side yard setback of 0.85 meters, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum corner side yard setback of 4.5 meters. If we could have the applicant come forward, please.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair. My name is Layla Emrys. I live at 1009 Hooper. I am the applicant and agent for this application.
Thank you. And I assume you'll be swearing the oath then?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Is this a matter of existing conditions, Ms. Emrys?
It is. We are demolishing an existing porch and we are replacing it with an existing, with a new addition that will be slightly larger. However, the setback will not be larger than the existing condition. That said, because it is a new structure, it will not be compliant with current zoning. We will require a variance on side yard setback.
Okay. Does any member of committee have any questions or comments? And I see that planning staff have no concerns. There are no requested conditions, and there is nobody requested to speak today. If you wouldn't mind just quickly going over the 4 tests for committee under the Planning Act.
Oh, yes. So we believe that the variance is minor in nature. You know, it doesn't actually divert very far from the zoning. It is a change, but it's quite close to the existing condition. Desirable for the development, I think, again, it's an existing condition that's there. We simply want to improve it, make it more usable. The general intent of the city plan, I believe, as stated in the planner's report, it doesn't deviate, nor does it deviate from the intent of the bylaw. It is within the existing condition of the neighborhood. Again, it doesn't have any significant impact on what is existing already, nor is the existing condition in deviation from what the general character of the neighborhood is.
Thank you. Members of the committee, are we comfortable voting on this now? Okay, on approval of this application. Your application is approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, on to item number 4, 479 Vernon Avenue. If we could have the applicant come forward. I believe it's Mr. Bisson. Is the coordinator able to advise? Oh, there he is, Mr. Bisson. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
So you're Mr. Bisson, and what your address for the record, please?
My address is 122 Cresthaven Drive.
Okay, and will you be swearing the oath then?
I will.
Okay. You solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property line to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do.
Thank you. So there's a subtlety to this in terms of what the whether it's side yard or rear yard. Are you aware of this interpretation?
We are because the project actually went through a pre-consult application prior to the release of the new bill requirements. And speaking with that planner at the time, it was my understanding that there was a confusion between what was considered front yard or rear yard. And at that time, we came to the conclusion that the way the application was submitted, that the request submitted was in fact the rear yard.
Yeah, so it's I believe the interpretation is the addition at northerly interior side yard, not the rear. I don't believe that's Miss Linker on this one. I have the planning staff here just to walk us through that.
Mr. Chair. So the confusion was with the minor variance required for the rear yard, as the applicant has reviewed the rear yard setback according to the provision of the interior lot, but like as it's a corner lot, it only requires less rear yard setback.
Okay. Thank you. Members of the committee, are there any questions? Are we prepared to vote on this matter? Okay, on approval of this application. Thank you, sir. Your application is approved.
Thank you.
And on to item 5. All right, so item 5 is a minor variance at 435 Echo Drive. And there are 3 variances requested here to permit the reduced rear yard setback equal to 25.3% of the lot, which is 7.6 meters, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum rear yard setback equal to 30% or 9.1 meters. Variance B to permit an increased balcony projection of 2.2 meters, whereas the bylaw permits a maximum balcony projection of 1.2 meters. And variance C to permit an increased total rooftop access area of 12.3 square meters, whereas the bylaw permits a maximum rooftop access area of 10.5 square meters. If we could have the applicant come forward, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
Good afternoon, Ms. Soor. For the record, your name and address, please.
So name is Simran Soor and address is 240 Michael Copeland Drive.
Thank you. And will you be swearing in?
I will be.
Okay. You solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I swear.
Thank you. You, Ms. Soor, have a history of going through applications at a very good pace, so we appreciate that. And if we could have you walk us through this application, please.
For sure. Before I go on to the presentation, we just wanted to amend the notice for the owner's name. There was an error in the spelling of the owner's name.
Okay, for the record, please, could you please advise?
Yeah, so the name should be Oksana, so Oksana, and the last name should be Zbyrannyk.
Okay, thank you. And if the committee coordinator can make note of that. Okay, so if you'd like to proceed, Ms. Soor.
Sure. So good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Simran Soor, and I'll be presenting the minor variance application for the property municipally known as 435 Echo Drive. Next slide, please. The subject property is located in the Old Ottawa East neighborhood within the City of Ottawa's Capital Ward. So you can see the property on the image in front of you, including the property's location relative to the Rideau Canal. Next slide, please. The subject property is an interior lot located on the eastern side of Echo Drive. So the subject property has a lot frontage of 9.14 meters along Echo Drive and a lot area of approximately 276 square meters. And the subject property is currently occupied by a 2-story detached dwelling. Next slide, please. The proposal seeks to redevelop the subject property with a 3-story detached dwelling. The proposed dwelling will include a front-facing balcony and a rooftop terrace. So the slide in front of you shows the proposed site plan on the left and the proposed elevations on the right. Next slide, please. So the slide in front of you highlights the requested variances. So variances are requested for the reduced rear yard setback, an increased front balcony projection, and an increased total rooftop access area. So we'll speak quickly to the 4 tests. So the first test is that the general intent and purpose of the official plan is maintained. So the subject property is within the inner urban transect, and it's part of the Rideau Canal Special District in the official plan. The proposed development meets the intent of the official plan by providing a multi-generational family-friendly dwelling that fits into the neighborhood context. The proposed development will not impact the character of the Rideau Canal Special District and will respect the existing streetscape, including the height and built form of the neighborhood. So the minor variance maintains the general intent and purpose of the official plan. Next slide, please. The second test for the minor variance is that the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw is maintained. So the subject property is zoned residential 4th density subzone UD under the City of Ottawa zoning bylaw. The proposed development meets the general intent of the rear yard setback provisions to provide adequate separation from rear neighbors and adequate amenity area for residents. While relief is required from the minimum rear yard setback, we note that the proposed development meets the required rear yard area, and it'll provide ample amenity space for the owners and their family. Next slide, please. So the proposed development will be separated from the dwelling to the rear by approximately 25 meters. So that's adequate separation to allow for both privacy, for privacy for both the residents and their neighbors. Tree plantings and a rear fence are also proposed to provide additional privacy for both the residents and neighbors. The reduced rear yard setback will also fit in well with the character of rear yards in this block of the neighborhood, which is characterized by a variety of lot depths and setbacks. So the image in front of you shows a number of properties within this block that have smaller rear yard setbacks to what is proposed. The proposed setback will fit in well with these properties and will have a minimal impact on the rear yard character of the block, as the proposed rear yard setback is a common condition within this block. Next slide, please. The proposed development will also meet the general intent of the balcony projection provisions to reduce overlook and protect the privacy of neighbors. So the image in front of you is a rendering of the proposed development in its context, which shows that the proposed front balcony. The proposed front balcony will fit into the streetscape where there are a number of similar sized balconies, which you can see on the property to the left. The front balcony has also been designed to align with the permitted porch projection below, which will result in a front balcony projection that has no more impact on neighbors than the front porch that's permitted as of right. The front balcony will also have no impact on neighbors across the street, since the property has no front neighbors and looks directly out to the Rideau Canal. The proposed variance for the total rooftop access area will meet the intent of the zoning bylaw to ensure that adequate space is provided to enter and exit the rooftop terrace without occupying a significant portion of the rooftop area. The proposed elevator and the increased rooftop access area will support accessible living and allow all members of the household to access the rooftop amenity space. So the minor variances meet the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. The third test for minor variances is that it's considered desirable for the use of land. So the proposed development is considered desirable for the use of land, as it'll provide a family-friendly dwelling unit that fits in well with the character and build form of the neighborhood. The proposed reduction in the rear yard setback is a common condition on the block, and the proposed development includes measures to reduce any impacts on neighbors. The proposed variances will provide for more amenity space and a slightly larger building envelope, which will accommodate a multi-generational household. So the variances are considered desirable. Next slide, please. The fourth test for the minor variances is that a variance is minor in nature. So the proposed variance for the reduced rear yard setback constitutes a reduction of 1.5 meters, which is relatively small, as you can see in the image in front of you. Despite the reduced rear yard setback, the proposed development meets the minimum required rear yard area, as I mentioned before, and it'll fit into the rear yard character of the block. The proposed development includes abundant soft landscaping in the front yard that exceeds the requirements of the zoning bylaw, which will reduce the impact of the reduced setback on the overall soft landscaping on the site. The impact of the reduced rear setback is also on neighbors is also minimal. So despite the reduced setback, around 25 meters of separation is provided, and tree plantings and a rear fence will help preserve privacy for rear neighbors. Next slide, please. The proposed variance for the increased front balcony projection is also minor, as it constitutes an increase of only 1 meter. The impact of the increased balcony projection is minor, as it will be consistent with similar balcony projections on neighboring dwellings. And there'll be no impact on neighbors across the street, since there's no front neighbors and it directly faces the canal. The proposed balcony will provide the owners and their family more space to enjoy views of the Rideau Canal while having a minimal impact on neighbors. Next slide, please. The proposed variance for the increased total rooftop access area is also minor, as it constitutes an increase of only 1.8 square meters from what is permitted. This difference is incremental, but would provide the necessary space to accommodate both a stairwell and an elevator. And this increased rooftop access area will have no impact on neighboring properties while supporting accessible living. So the variances are considered minor in nature. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, the proposed variances maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan and the zoning bylaw. Furthermore, the requested variances are considered desirable for the use of land, and they're minor in nature. So it's our opinion that the proposed variances meet all 4 tests of the Planning Act and represent good land use planning. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Soar, and as always, very fast pace. Can I ask you, are you aware of, my understanding is the zoning bylaw contemplates certain things when an elevator is proposed in terms of what can go on the upper level. Are you aware of that? If not, that's fine. I'd be happy to ask staff about it as well.
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure what you're referring to, so I'd welcome the comments from staff.
Okay, well, we'll get to that in a moment then, Mr. Chan. Thank you. I have a lineup of people. Before we take on any additional speakers, I see members of the committee have their hands up. So Mr. Wilder first.
Thank you. Ms. Soar, this is a lovely redevelopment. I see that. The proposal shows a large patio on the roof, lots of amenity area, lovely balcony in the front for amenity area. Personally, I see the rear yard I realize that you're meeting the full rear yard requirement, but in terms of the rear yard setback of the 30%, in this instance, in my mind, there's absolutely no reason why you need variance A. I can support variance B and C, but frankly, I see the lovely, I guess, patio and what's proposed for furniture and whatnot at the rear of the house. Frankly, there's adequate, more than adequate for this family amenity area with the balcony, the rooftop terrace. Surely, in my mind, there is no reason why the 30% cannot be met in this instance, notwithstanding that you have that 25-meter separation from the abutting property. I still feel once again that there is no reason not to meet the standards set by the zoning bylaw in variance A. Thank you.
Ms. Sawyer or Mr. Chown, what would the implications be if the setback was not approved?
So if I may, Mr. Chair, in response to the concerns or comments from Member Wilder, this is a custom home that's been designed to meet the needs of the current owners, occupants of this property. So it's not a question about the amount or quantity of outdoor amenity space. It's about accommodating their needs within the house. And so a reduction of 1 or 1.5 meters in the depth of the property would have significant impacts on how the interior of the house functions and meets the needs of the current owners of the properties as they plan to build, their forever home on this property that they can age in with their family.
Thank you. Ms. Oakcharon?
Thank you. My question is whether the applicant consulted with the surrounding neighbors, in particular with regard to the rear yard setback.
So the answer to that question is absolutely. Our clients reached out to all of their immediate neighbors and have met with a number of them. So the communication between our clients and the neighbors has been extensive, and subject to what you hear this afternoon, we've seen the comments from the Old Ottawa East Community Association, which came in late this morning, but certainly in terms of written submissions, we're not aware of any concerns that have been raised by any of the neighbors with respect to any of the variances, in particular, the relief that we're seeking with respect to the rear yard setback.
Thank you. Before we move to a delegation, any other questions or comments from members of the committee? No. Okay. I believe we have a speaker on the list, and I see her hand is up. Olenka Galadza. Hi. If you could unmute your microphone, thank you. Your name and your address for the record, please.
Thank you. My name is Olenka Galadza. I'm a retired teacher from Immaculata High School, and I also live at 160 McGillivray Street, right around the corner from the Zbranek family.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead and proceed. You have 5 minutes to address.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope not to use up all 5 minutes, but I did write out my comments, and I also have a few more as a result of these proceedings. First of all, thank you so much for engaging in this democratic process of engaging neighbors and engaging the community. I'm surprised that the neighbors were consulted. I, as a neighbor, have met the Zbraniks. I've spoken with them. I wish them all the best. They're wonderful people, but I have not. This was the first that we read about it when we received the notice. Also, our neighbors across the street from our backyard on Heritage Street first heard about this from me, and the construction would take place in their backyard. So I'd like to understand the reason for the application to demolish the present beautiful two-story structure at 435 Echo, which is in keeping with the neighborhood architecture. And if you could please explain if there are any significant irreparable defects to the foundation or to the building itself. These questions are of interest to us and our neighbors. And thank you for receiving all of these comments in a friendly and neighborly way. In the interest of environmental concerns, dust, debris, energy used, and so on, would the applicant please kindly explain the reasons for demolishing the sound beautiful structure instead of building onto it if this is deemed necessary? There is a 2-story building that was converted to a 3-story. However, after having seen the project design, I understand why a demolishment would be preferred. If the construction is deemed necessary, could the applicant please indicate the season in which the construction would occur and the duration of the construction estimated? For example, if it is winter, the Echo Drive and Heritage Street access is often inaccessible due to snow. And please note that Echo Drive is a dead end, so accessible only via Heritage Street for construction vehicles and other servicing vehicles. So the entire construction would take place with vehicles approaching from Heritage Street as it stands today. As we live around the corner from that address, 435 Echo, we live on the corner of McGillivray Street and Heritage Street, and we have a driveway facing Heritage Street. We have found that any construction or servicing and delivery issues on Heritage Street and Echo Drive involve large trucks entering a confined area, often blocking passage of cars, not to mention our driveway, especially this winter. I wasn't able to get out a number of times. Thank you for explaining the necessity of the proposed action, since blockage of the area together with the noise and disruption during the construction process, would be of concern to neighbors. And they have voiced this to me. I'm surprised that the applicant has not heard these questions. Thank you for explaining and what the plan would be to minimize any impact of construction, noise, disruption to neighbors. I also have a number of other questions as a result of this hearing, and thank you again. I'm surprised it's called a minor variance. I've heard porches and backyards and so on being mentioned in minor variances. Here we're talking about the demolishment of an entire 2-story structure with the construction and raising of a 3-story structure. So I don't understand that terminology. The neighbors were not spoken to, at least the ones on Heritage and on McGillivray that I've spoken with. The Heritage Street neighbors that I spoke with 2 days ago said they were surprised and shocked because it's literally the construction would be in their backyard. Also, I mentioned the character of the neighborhood with older buildings and architecture and the desire to maintain at least some of the character of the neighborhood. So I thank you. I thank you very much for allowing me to speak. And again, please accept this in a friendly way. We've met the Spraniks and we wish them all the best.
Thank you. I guess I'll lead off by saying that they're all reasonable questions. However, not all of them are within our purview as a committee. Some of them fall to things like the building department and others. So what we are deciding upon today is not whether the house itself comes down, but how the new proposal is constructed. With that said, there are a few questions that you had that, as a matter of goodwill, perhaps Mr. Chown and Ms. Sewer may have some information to convey. And if you can, I think that would be appreciated.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, thank you for that. And I do want to thank Ms. Galadza for her questions and comments. Obviously, our clients thought long and hard about whether or not they could meet their household requirements by expanding or repairing the existing house on the property, and they've come to the conclusion that that simply isn't financially viable as an option for them. Obviously, questions with respect to construction activity are something that the contractor will have to be sensitive to and aware of. And I would certainly hope that the contractor will be reaching out to neighbors and certainly responding to neighbors during the course of construction. In terms of timing, that's very much up in the air right now. I think that At the earliest, it would be sometime late summer this fall that construction would commence, but there's an awful lot of variables still to be addressed before our clients will actually go into the ground. So I'm sorry, I can't give you a definitive response to that question. In terms of context, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, our clients didn't go to every door in the neighborhood. They went to the immediate neighbors and they distributed a flyer. And if they missed a few, I apologize for that, but they certainly made every effort to reach out to their immediate neighbors.
Thank you, Mr. Chown. Just to assist when construction occurs, the city's building department does oversee that to ensure that it's done in accordance with the Building Code Act of Ontario. So that is something that you'll be able to seek clarification from through the building department. You'll see a building permit will be issued and will need to be posted at the site. And that's where you can collect information about it and then contact the building department as well. So if there's any construction related concerns, that would be the starting point to deal with that. Things like dust and noise are a little different, but there are some bylaws with respect to noise that are also applicable. So in terms of hours of operation, that sort of thing. Members of committee, do you have any further questions or comments on anything that you've heard from the delegation? Is committee prepared to make a decision now, or would you prefer to reserve? I'll poll the committee and Ms. Oakeshott.
Mr. Chair, I think
Want to hear
Mr.
from
Dance
Mr.
from the
Dance?
Community
Oh, I'm
Association.
sorry. Yes, sorry. Yes, Mr. Dance, you're not on the list, but you did send in a letter. My apologies. Please come forward.
Thank you, Chair. John Dance, 68 McNaughton, Ottawa, Ontario. I'm the chair of the Old Ottawa East Community Association Planning Committee. Appreciate the opportunity. Like Member Wilder, we have concerns about the variance for the reduced rear yard. And we have seen over the last year and a half, numerous requests for rear yard reductions, both through the minor variance process and also through the zoning bylaw amendments. And it's troubling, frankly. And in terms of the Committee of Adjustment, all that we've seen have been approved. And frankly, rear yards are really important. And to have to reduce them when we're trying to have more green, trying to increase the tree canopy, it doesn't make a lot of sense. We have to ask, at what point does the cumulative impact, overall impact of a number of minor variances constitute something that isn't minor? 3 are being asked for. We support 2 of them, but not the rear yard setback. There isn't no compelling reason that we saw in the documentation why the rear yard should be reduced. It was mentioned that there's some significant impacts on the functioning of the home. This home is an extra floor. It has other additional space. It's pretty hard to believe that the 1.5 meters is essential for this quote unquote custom home. It should be more respectful. It should fit better. And one way it could do it is by not having that increased rear yard. Or excuse me, the reduced rear yard. So I would make that point. I just say it gets troubling after a while when we see all these approvals for reductions of the rear yard. The second point I'd like to make, just for the reference, we hadn't received as of this morning, I received the city comments, and they're always valuable. We really would appreciate getting them in advance. We're pleased to see that they view this application consistent with the new Rideau Canal Special District. Is good, but boy, we need the information beforehand so we can respond to it. So again, I just make that plea. I guess finally, I just would appreciate the committee in its wisdom, and I know you have massive workloads and so on, but please consider the cumulative impacts of what you're approving and the precedents. And I know they're not deemed precedents, but every time we see these things, it's a reduced rear yard. And it does matter to how this city works. And it's not as though there really will be fewer people living in this building because you have it's a single family, albeit multi-generational family, but it will not be fewer people living there as a result of meeting the zoning requirements for rear yard. So thank you very much, Chair. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Dance. Does anybody on committee have any questions or comments for Mr. Dance? Ms. Oakcharon?
I was wondering if the planning department could respond to Mr. Dance's presentation in the sense that they apparently have no concerns about the rear yard setback being reduced. Maybe they could comment on, we heard earlier that there's no specific requirement that the home has to be built with this rear yard setback reduction, and yet the planning department has no concerns. So maybe they could just add some color to that comment.
Certainly, planning staff, please come forward and if you could provide some insight.
Yes, so we recognize that the rear yard setback reduction is really minor. It's 1.5 meters. So and it's not taking all the rear yard to be included in the proposed building. And on the other side, it's the proposed rear yard is reserving all the softscaping required, and they are not coming over the softscaping, so it's already providing the whole rear yard to be softscaped. What I can review through the plans is this setback was made to provide the privacy from the front yard. To provide the balcony in the front yard, they pulled back the line, the building line to the back, so the proposed balcony would not exceed the balcony of the neighbors. So I can see it came from there that they have just pulled the building back this 1.5 meter to provide the balcony in the front, and the setback reduced is not impacting the context of the surrounding neighbors. It's complying with the other neighbors, and they are providing more softscaping than the surrounding neighbors.
So if I understand correctly, to avoid projecting out beyond the existing balcony, this unit was pushed further back, and did I hear you correctly that it was pushed further back by 1.5 meters?
So, yes, to have this the extension in the balcony in the front, they have pushed back the line of the building to the back, so they want annoy the neighbor. They provide to keep the privacy for the neighbors that from the front balcony. They pushed back the proposed building, so they will keep the front the front line of balcony at the same line aligned with the balcony of their neighbor from the north side.
So was this a goodwill gesture, or was this something the city planning staff had requested?
No, we didn't request.
Okay. Mr. Chan, do you have anything to add to that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And actually, I think Ms. Sewer may be able to confirm exactly what the staff planner said in terms of the location of the building on the site and shifting it back ever so slightly so that the balcony that we're proposing aligns to the balcony to the north. But Mr. Chair, I do want to respond to the concerns expressed by Mr. Dance on behalf of the Old Ottawa East Community Association. Let me start by saying we have reached out to the Old Ottawa East Community Association several times with respect to this application and have not heard back from them. So we've never had an opportunity to actually have a dialogue with the Old Ottawa East Community Association about this application. There's a number of comments about, the size of the house and whether it's appropriate for a single family household. The house is being designed so it includes the ability for working at home. So it's a slightly larger house. Both the owners work from home and want to be able to work from home, so that we or providing space for that, all of which adds up in terms of the square footage of the building. And that square footage is what has combined with where the building sits on the site is why we're seeking the relief with respect to the rear yard setback. I know Ms. Sewer, goes through her presentation quickly to try to get everything before the committee within that 5 minute limit. But there was one slide that she presented in her deck, which was very important, which is what the rear yard pattern is on this block. What we're asking for in terms of rear yard setback is not out of character with the existing rear yard lot pattern or the rear yard pattern for the lots on this property. In fact, what we're providing is still significantly greater than many of the properties on this block. And it's even greater than the setback of the apartment building immediately to the south. So we're not asking for relief that's out of character with the neighborhood, out of character with the block. And I'd reiterate that none of the immediate neighbors have raised any concerns whatsoever with respect to the rear yard setback requirement. I would be concerned that the committee would refuse it just on principle because we haven't indicated why it's needed. That is not a test under the Act, but we've tried to explain to the committee why we're asking for it. But in terms of the 4 tests under the Planning Act, you have Ms. Sewer's professional planning opinion, you have my professional planning opinion, and you have the professional planning opinion from your professional staff that the variances, including the rear yard, meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act. I would urge the committee to accept that evidence and approve the application as filed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You suggested Ms. Sewer might have a follow-up comment regarding the balcony. I think, Ms. Sewer, do you have anything extra to add?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. We didn't necessarily talk to city staff about this, but that was something that was considered. I believe that basically sort of making sure that we're aligning with that balcony next door.
Okay. Anything else that you want to add? You're good?
No, I think Mr. Chan covered it quite well. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Member Oakcharon again, follow up.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to say that I appreciate Mr. Chan's comments very much. But I did want to, I guess, confirm on the record that this is a brand new build. So in my mind, it's hard for me to understand why that rear yard setback is a necessity that requires an exemption as a minor variance.
Thank you. Mr. Wilder.
Yes, just with regards to the balcony, and I appreciate the pushback to a line, but notwithstanding that, correct me if I'm wrong, even with the pushback, you're still asking for a 2.2 meter increased balcony projection where the maximum is 1.2. So notwithstanding that you've lined up the balconies and pushed back, you're still asking for a variance on that balcony. Am I correct?
That's correct, Mr. Wilder.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that.
All right, Mr. Dance, I see you have your hand up. We don't normally have this to and fro, but if you do have a question to ask, please do.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to respond to Mr. Chown. We did receive one email from his firm. We did not receive multiple. We have this issue of rear yard. It was not something that we could particularly discuss with. As members have noted, you've already asking for their minor variances being sought for the front balcony. You didn't have to push it back. What is this? I'm curious to know what the square footage of this home is and how many people are going to be living there. It just seems excessive to push it to get that third variance. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Does planning staff have anything to add to this application?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Members of the committee, I'm going to suggest we reserve on this one and that we deal with this following the meeting. Are you in agreement with that? Okay, so we will reserve on this, and as per customary responses, they will be issued within 10 days. Thank you for everyone for making their presentations. Thank you. All right, item 6 was adjourned, and we're on to item 7. Item 7 is a minor variance at 366 brackets 340 Queen Street. And the variance is to permit reduced width for 2 parking spaces, unit 8 and 9, of 2.53 meters, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum parking space width of 2.6 meters. And Mr. Denomi is he here?
Hi, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Denomi, your last your address, please.
That's the name, Vincent Deneme, 505 Preston Street, Ottawa, Ontario.
Thank you, sir. And are you swearing the oath?
Yeah.
Okay. You solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property line to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I affirm.
Thank you. Before we begin, I have a question about one of the documents that you had submitted where you're talking about the 4 tests. And I think it's a typo, Mr. Denai. Under test 4, just above your signature block, there's a reference to the same portion of the bylaw to 4.6 meters, brackets, small cars. What did you mean by 4.6 and did you mean 2.6?
That is a typo, you're right. So I did mean 2.6, yeah.
Okay, thank you. In terms of how these changes take place, did you look at it with a turning radius to see if there's any issues getting vehicles in and out, given that in this particular instance, they are beside a column?
Yeah, so we do have the architect plans that show a drive aisle, and we use software to demonstrate that the cars can maneuver properly. That's done, at the building permit stage. So the reduction.
Okay, so you don't have something to show us here today, then?
No.
Okay. If the committee were inclined to approve this, would you have any objections to having it signed compact vehicles?
No.
Okay. I don't believe there's any speakers for this one. No, there is not. I think the committee clearly understands what's being proposed here. Members of the committee, do you have any questions for Mr. Denley? Ms. Oakesharon?
Hard for me to put my question into words, but I see that these stalls are assigned to unit 8 and unit 9, so specific units in the building. And I guess my question is, when those units are sold, how will those owners know that their vehicle will fit in this reduced stall?
To you, Mr. Chair, the unit numbers don't actually reflect any unit that is in the building. The condo plans need to be registered in a sequence of 1, starting at 1, up to how many units we have for the parking. So the tenants do get to choose their parking spot. And at the time of sale, we tell them if it's a small car or a big car parking spot. Therefore, those were already contemplated as small spaces due to the proximity to the columns. Therefore, whoever bought those units know that those are small car parking spots.
Those units sold that apply to those 2 spots?
I'd have to double check, but I believe so, yes.
Okay, because my next comment was going to be, would you be opposed to putting that in the purchase and sale agreements, an acknowledgement that they're smaller, but you believe they're sold?
Correct, but I'm pretty sure there's already an agreement in that, or a condition in the agreement of purchase and sale, but I can confirm that.
Yeah, I mean, if you want us to make a decision today, it would be after the fact. I don't think it would hurt though to to still have a requirement to sign it for compact vehicles. Members of the committee, are we prepared to vote on this with an amendment to include a provision for signage to indicate it's for compact vehicles? Okay, on approval as amended. Okay, you're approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, so on to the last item, I believe. And it's a minor variance for 623 Rowanwood Avenue. And the relief being sought, there are four, to permit a reduced lot width of 14 meters, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum lot width of 15 meters. To permit a front-facing garage, whereas the bylaw does not permit a front-facing garage, based on the conclusion of the streetscape character analysis. To permit a reduced total combined interior side yard setback of 2.8 meters, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum total combined interior side yard setback of 3 meters, and to permit a reduced lot area of 419.06 square meters, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum of 450 square meters. If we could have the applicant come forward, Mr. Segredo.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members.
Mr. Segredo, just for the record, your address, please.
My address is 30 Concourse Gate, Unit 47.
Now, I don't know if you're able to swear this one, and I'm not sure, I can't recall whether it was sworn before. Is there someone who can swear that? Or maybe better yet, I'll ask the committee coordinator, has this already been sworn?
Yes, it has already been sworn, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Segredo, you're off the hook there. If you, I see Ms. Linker has her hand up just before we proceed. Ms. Linker.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if that was misread, but I believe that the applicants have requested that the interior side yard setback variance be removed from the application.
Okay.
That's
Thank
correct.
You. All right. So that is variance C.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. That variance has now been deleted. We've reduced the building in order to accommodate the proper side yard setbacks.
Okay. Maybe at a high level, Mr. Segredo, you could just walk us through where we're at then with these three remaining variances.
The variances as they stand, variance A to permit the reduced lot width of 14 meters, whereas the bylaw requires 15 meters. We're requesting that variance. We're also requesting the variance D, which is to permit the reduced lot area to 119.06 square meters, where the bylaw requires 450. So now what we're asking is to legalize a lot that is already existing there, which is somewhat substandard to the 50-foot lots that are in the neighborhood. And the other variance that I'm requesting, the third variance, is basically to permit a front-facing garage where the bylaw does not permit a front-facing garage based on the conclusions of the streetscape analysis. Those are the three variances that I'm requesting today.
And Mr. Segredo, this is a front-facing garage proposal with a depressed driveway, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. What we've done is that I know that the owners have gone to the engineering department and they have a letter or an email on record that I submitted on my application there, saying that the reverse slope would not be a problem due to the fact that there is storm, there is sanitary, there's water there, and there is an email which was sent to you in my application from Amy Whelan from the engineering department, and it says that they had no concerns with it. The slope is very minimal. It's about normally it's about 8% or so. In this case here, I would say it's about 4% or so, about 2 feet or so. But again, engineering does not have any issues with it. And this was one of the questions that was brought up at the last meeting that we had.
Is this a scenario where there's gravity flow to the storm sewer, or is it pumped, Mr. Segredo, or do you know?
I don't think it's pumped. I think it's still gravity. I think we're still okay. But that will be something that will be addressed at the time of the lot grading, drainage, and servicing plan. We'll get that done by the engineer. But for now, I believe it. My assumption is that it will be just gravity at the moment.
Okay, on the reverse slope driveway, I think Ms. McLean may have a few follow-up questions for you. Ms. McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just always struggling with front-facing garages and the fact that the bylaw does not permit them when they don't meet the streetscape character analysis. In this instance, you're also introducing the reverse slope driveway, and I just wondered, are there any other slope driveways on that part of Rowanwood in that block?
Ms. McLean, I think there's only one other one. I don't have the address of it, but I think there is just one other one. With respect to the front-facing garages, I know that there are 4 or 5 other ones that do have the front-facing garages, which are across the street from us and beside us. I have it in my presentation. I can show it to you in my presentation with the addresses on it. The other reason, which is very important for us to have the garage front-facing, is with respect to having the garage in the rear yard. There are issues with the rear yard, with having a garage in the rear yard. And if you go to, you can clearly see the subject property right now, which is in orange there. And the front-facing garages, I believe, are across the street, which are the ones, attached garages. There's 6 of them. The ones that are in green are the attached garages. But can you go to the other slide? I want to go to the site plan, please. Okay, there's the site plan. So the site plan is basically showing you the building itself with respect to the front yard setback, the side yard setbacks that are met, the rear yard setback, and the driveway. Next page, please. Okay, so the subject property is showing here in red, and you can clearly see the garage off to the right-hand side. Now, if I were to do a detached garage, it would be at the back of the property, and the implications with putting the garages in the back for us, number one is that Hydro has limitations with setbacks that we have. There's a 3 meter to a 5 meter radius that we have to respect. So putting the garage in the back actually takes away quite a bit of the rear yard landscaped area, and it is very difficult to get a building permit to allow for the garage in the back. In addition to that, you can clearly see that there's a fair amount of driveway that we're trying to eliminate, and rather having that, we would much more prefer to have green space on that. If you look at the other option number 2, you can clearly see the building again, and then if we were to put the garage off to the side, as an example, you would clearly kill the backyard and the amenity space there. And this is one of the reasons why we want to put the garage in the front. We want to have the garage in the front so we can preserve the backyard and we can preserve the side yards with additional green space. Next slide, please. I think we went. This is the driveway. You can clearly see the slope that we're looking at, and it's about a 4% slope. It's only from the property line going downwards. It's not very steep. It's about 2 feet, 2.5 feet at the most. So it's a very shallow slope going down towards the basement. Next slide.
Just before you move off of that,
yep.
Mr. Segreto, did I hear you correctly that there will be positive grade from the curb to the property line and then it drops? Is that what you intended to say?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. If you look at the property line, which is the dark line there where the arrow, that will be sloping towards the street. From the property line, we're always forced to slope towards the street, and from the property line towards the house will be that 4% that we're looking at slopage, which is about 2.5 feet.
That's to mitigate the potential for stormwater to make its way down easier.
That's
okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Slide,
please proceed.
Next slide, please. Again, here are the examples. You can see the proposed dwelling, and you can see the elevation in green there, where we have tried to indicate what is the difference from grade from the property line going out and then to the garage door at the elevation of the garage door, which is again approximately 2 to 2.5 feet. I've also indicated at the addresses which are on the street across from us at 605, 609, 611, and 615, which all have front-facing garages. And the reason for that too is that their lots are bigger than our lots. They're about 50-foot lots, and they have that opportunity where we don't. And this is why I'm trying to get more green space off to the side and into the rear. Next slide, please. Again, that was just showing the units with the garages and the ones that don't have it and the ones that have them in the back. Next slide. Again, subject of the garages in the area. But I know in our streetscape analysis, we are only allowed to take 5 units off to one side, 5 units off to the other side, and then 10 units across the streets. Next slide, please. And that's basically just showing the site with the proposal that we have in front of you with the tree that is in the backyard that we're not impacting at all. That will be fine with the root system. I just want to mention to the committee that this application was first brought to your attention in November of last year. And this couple here has worked very, very hard trying to get as much as possible done. They've met with the community, they've met with the neighbors. I believe there's a handful of letters that have been submitted as well, supporting this application, that they don't have any concerns with it from the abutting neighbors, from the neighbors in the back. And this is not a development for someone to build or someone to sell. This is a couple that wants to live in this community and want to be part of this community as well. And they've worked very hard to try to get this application through. Next slide, please. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Segreto. And I note that we have some people who have commented in favor. I don't see that there's anyone against. We do have some concerns expressed by the planning department. These are not new to the committee. I just wonder, Ms. Linker, do you have anything else to add to those comments that have been provided regarding the reverse driveway and the front-facing garage?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff appreciate that the applicants have gone to confirm that the reverse slope driveway is permitted at this location, so it can move forward if it's permitted the attached front-facing garage at building permit. However, staff still have concerns with the variances to permit that the front-facing attached garage, as this design is not consistent with the streetscape's dominant characteristics. Staff encourage a design that retains the existing driveway location in the interior side yard to a detached garage in the rear, which would be more consistent with the dominant streetscape character.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Members of the committee, any follow-up questions at all? I'm going to suggest that that we consider putting this into reserve as well. We're going there already, and we do have a few concerns that we've discussed. Ms. McLean, does that make sense to you? Okay, Ms. Oakshire and Mr. Wilder. Okay, so we're going to reserve on this, and we will. Our decision will be issued in 10 days. Thank you very much, Mr. Segreto. I think we're at the end of our agenda. Just I don't often chair. I chair when people are sick, and I just it will be the last time for me probably in the chair. So I just wanted to thank city staff and committee staff for their hard efforts. It's not an easy job, and things come at them pretty quickly. So thank you to both of those groups, and also committee members who volunteer 4 years of their life to sitting here every second Wednesday and usually reviewing throughout the weekend. So thank you very much. And we will now